Hello, welcome to Salisbury Cathedral and to today's reflection for the 8th of June. I'm Robert Titley, the Cathedral's Canon Treasurer, and it's very good to be with you again. Regular reflection watchers may remember that the last one of these I did was not very long ago at all. It was Friday of last week, and I ended by saying that I had a train to catch. That train was taking me to Portsmouth, where we spent a very nice weekend off. Portsmouth is really a great place for a short break. There's a long beach, there are nice walks, there's loads to see, especially if you like things naval. This time we visited HMS Victory. On a previous visit we looked around the wonderful Mary Rose and the museum, and on Sunday afternoon I spent a remarkable half hour or so moving among an astonishing collection of ships' figureheads. Now that day, Sunday, June the 6th, was a day of historical and historic significance. It was the 77th anniversary of the D-Day landings. In 1944, the largest ever amphibious operation which began the invasion of Western Europe. An operation in which Portsmouth played a pivotal part. There were various commemorations in the city on Sunday. There was a service at the Cathedral. In the dockyard there were a number of boats. Now I know the difference between a ship and a boat, and these were definitely boats which had taken part in the landings all those years ago. I found an extraordinarily moving experience to be standing on these little vessels bobbing about in the water. And there are some strange things as well. A group of people who seem to spend entire spare hours of every week, of every month of every year, doing up 1940s vintage Jeeps and doing themselves up in American military uniforms in meticulous detail. Well, we have our different ways of remembering, commemorating. D-Day is one of those great counterfactual moments in history. What if it had not come off? What if it had not been tried? Here was an event which without doubt hastened the end of the European war. And if D-Day had not been attempted, or if it had been attempted and the attempt had failed, it would have had a remarkable effect on that which followed the end of the Second World War, what we came to know as the Cold War. The Iron Curtain that Winston Churchill said was descending across Europe would have been much further west, I think, but for D-Day, conceivably even as far west as the Atlantic coast. And so the Europe in which I grew up, and the Europe we would see now, indeed the world we would be inhabiting now, would be a different place if that day 77 years ago had ended in disaster for the Allies. This was in my mind yesterday when I watched the reflection from Nigel, my colleague, which was about the G7, the big summit conference which the United Kingdom is hosting, in which Britain welcomes the other six: the US, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, also the presidents of the European Union and the European Commission, and the heads of government of guest nations who will be there as well. And all of that will be happening just 3 counties over from Portsmouth, 2 counties over from us here in Salisbury, in Cornwall. Now, 77 years ago, Cornwall was carpeted in parts with temporary camps full of American soldiers in their bell tents, waiting their turn to cross over to Normandy and to fight in Europe. What would they have said to you if somehow you could go back in time and have said to them, in 77 years, this place in which you are making your temporary home will be the site of a critical international conference. The people, the nations you're fighting will be there as allies and partners, and your most powerful ally, the USSR, subsequently known as Russia, will not be there. An unimaginable thing for someone in 1944 to contemplate. Nevertheless, there is a discernible thread between them and us. If you'd said to those GIs, well, in 7 decades' time, the world will again be engaged in a planetary struggle, they might not have been too surprised at that. But if you'd said to them the struggle was not going to be a war followed by a Cold War, but rather a virus followed by a collapsing climate, well, that would surprise them. But those are the things that are on the agenda of the G7 as they gather in Carbis Bay in Cornwall for what, despite their frightening agenda, is nevertheless a happier gathering than those others that took place during the World War. The Christian development organisation Tear Fund says that this is a meeting that could change the world. And it could. Or it could very easily not, if it becomes yet another gathering of the powerful in which a collective decision or a failure to make a decision leads to those who take part in it, leaving it to someone else or somewhere else or somewhen else for the critical choices to be made. I hope, as they gather in that beautiful corner of southwest England, that they will indeed feel the weight of history upon them, the weight of a history stretching back in that part of the world 77 years and way before that. A weight of history impelling them to look forward another 2 decades, to imagine where we might be at the end of this 21st century, and to ask themselves, as you and I must ask ourselves, what kind of a world do we want to bequeath to those who will come after us 7 decades on? Tear Fund are urging us all to pray for Prime Minister Johnson as he chairs the sessions and for all those who will be with him. And to feed our praying, they suggest that we read a very short passage from the Hebrew Scriptures from the book of Deuteronomy. The words are God's command to his chosen people. They're words which are aimed at a rather small nation and aimed at a locality. As we hear those words now, we know that our locality is the whole world. If there is one among you, anyone in need, a member of your community in any of your towns within the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted towards your needy neighbour. You should rather open your hand, willingly lending enough to meet the need, whatever it may be. Thank you for watching and for listening, and may God be with you. Goodbye.